Wow, welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm Dino. It is absolutely smoking hot here in Niagara Falls, Ontario. It's 30 degrees Celsius already, and it's only not even 10 in the morning yet, so it's gonna get really hot. So I'm gonna apologize already because I got every single door and window open in the Tinker Shed. You're gonna hear some background noise on today's video, I'll guarantee it. I'll try to minimize it, but I just have to have the windows open today. And speaking of today, we're gonna take a look at this thing right here. This little tool storage compartment that Suzuki provides for you to carry your tools in case you have to fix your bike out on the trail. Well, it seems like every single DR owner wants to swap that thing out, and I'm no different. So today, I'm gonna show you my solution for how to get a little bit more storage in the same location. So sit back, grab yourself something really cold to drink, and enjoy Dino's Tinker Shed. What a day for welding and sweating. Oh man, oh man, oh man. Here is the stock toolbox. It's not huge, it's all plastic, and it holds a few things. I have an extra screwdriver in there, I don't know why. And it holds the tool pouch that came from the factory stock. And this of course holds all of your wrenches, screwdrivers, and even this nifty little pair of slip joint pliers. And that's what Suzuki gives you to maintain your bike. And you know what? Many people just use this kit to service their bike. They believe that if you can't fix it with this, then you should have that tool in the toolbox so you can fix it on the trail. For me, I just want to add a couple more things into mine, not a lot. I'd like to store my tire levers in here and maybe a couple other things. I kind of like this little screwdriver. It's just a little more comfortable than that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use something a little different. And here is what I've decided to use for mine. Now many people use ABS plastic tubing with caps on each end, but I found this on sale at the Home Depot for I think it was $11. They were trying to clear them out, and what this is a welding electrode storage box. It has a gasket and a threaded top lid, and it even has a divider down the center of the container here that you can either pull in or leave out to make two separate actual containers for storage. Now, it's not overly huge, but it will provide, oh, I don't know, maybe 50% more, maybe double the capacity. It is pretty big if you go all the way out into the cap. It'll just give me a little bit more storage for the items that I want. Now obviously the stock unit here has a pair of tabs that mount onto the bike. This does not have those. My thinking is I'm going to use a little bit of angle iron like this, and I'll clamp around that with some band clamps, and then to attach this to the bike I have these, and if I can get one of these open, I'll show you what they are. These are pre-made metal tabs that you can buy from, I think I got these from Princess Auto maybe, and they just are a very quick and easy way to bolt things on. So I'm either going to weld them on like this and drop the box a little bit, or I might slide them onto the side like that and then have the box a little bit tighter. We're gonna have to take a look at that ourselves. But that's the general idea here on how I'm gonna mount this thing onto the bike. I didn't show you how I actually got the toolbox off here. So using a 10mm socket, I'm gonna remove these two bolts and the toolbox comes off. Now using those bolts, I'm gonna mount the new tabs up onto the frame and level them up and square them to each other in preparation for dry fitting the new tube. With the tabs in place, I can now hold this angle iron up here And you can kind of see that if I was to hold it parallel to the frame, I'm going to run into some interference issues up here. What I think I want to do is actually angle it down so it's somewhere in around in there. To get this angle, I'm just going to lay that iron up along the tabs, and I'm going to score a couple marks here with some soapstone. Now I can take these tabs to the bench and cut them, and I think I'm going to try to weld them onto this spine of the angle iron. That should tuck the tube in deep enough that I can get the side cover back on. But let's start. We'll get these tabs up onto the bench. Now that we have the tab actually marked, I'm going to clamp it in the vise and follow that line that I made with soapstone. Now, soapstone is a great product, and welders use it all the time because it's resistant to heat, and when you're cutting like this, it also doesn't blow away. It's a great product to have in your shop, and it's really, really cheap. Now, once I get the first tab cut, I'll go back to the bike and take off the second tab, and the process is basically the same. Just clamp it in the vise, cut along the line, and Bob's your uncle. It's really, really easy, and I'm going to use these extra long pliers here so that I don't get my ham fists in the way and block your view. Great. Okay, I'm going to now use a sanding disc here, and I'm just going to clean the edge up, and then I'm going to put a bevel on it so that my small welder gets the best penetration it possibly can on this steel. It's not super thick, but it's pretty thick for my welder. I think what's going to work best is actually to weld these right on the edge like this. And that'll give me the best support. So I'm going to actually put a couple marks here so I know where those go. And then I can weld them right to the side of the plate. I think it'll be strong enough, and if I have to, I'll put a little gusset in the back. It's not hard to do. I've got that extra pieces of that I cut off. So I'll take these off one more time. I'm just going to extend these lines like that. Now I know that one goes there and one goes there. Beautiful. And this is the back, faces the back. This small welding project is actually going to give me an opportunity to try a different brand of welding wire. Now, for the last few rolls of welding wire that I've been using Hobart welding wire, flux core welding wire, and it works really good. I have pretty good luck with it, considering my flux core welder is the absolute cheapest flux core welder you can possibly imagine. It's an AC machine, so it spatters all over the place, and I don't get the best welds, but it does glue things together and makes them reasonably strong. Now, I was doing some, research recently, watching a bunch of videos on different types of welding wire, and this Forney welding wire kept coming up as really good flux core wire. So I bought a spool of it, and it's actually about half the price of the Hobart. I think it was $23 for 2 pounds of wire, whereas the Hobart and Miller's typically, well, this one's 2 pounds, but if you buy Miller wire, it's sold in 1 pound rolls. So I'll be interested to see how it flows and if it does any better on this. It probably can't polish a turd too much, but we'll see what the performance is, and I can give you my feedback on it with little welding experience that I have. Okay, I'm going to tack this tab in place now, and we'll see how it goes. Well, I've said this before. I am not in any way, shape, or form a good welder. I'm really not. I struggle with the process as much as I like it. It is very challenging for me. And part of it is the welder that I'm using. I know that inexpensive AC welder with 2 heat settings, that's all it has, and you can adjust the wire feed speed. does make it a little bit more difficult for someone like myself to really make a good bead. However, I have found over the years that better quality wire does make the welder itself function better. Now, I have tried Lincoln brand wire, I've tried Princess Auto's Power Fist wire, King wire, and a couple other knockoff brands that I've found as I'm poking around over the years. I've had this welder for probably 15 years now. And Hobart wire has been my go-to wire for a lot of years. Probably the last 2 or 3 anyway, since the first time I tried it. And it is a good wire. I find it personally to be better than the Lincoln wire. And I've always just went and bought Hobart wire. However, again, I was watching a few different YouTube videos, and this Forney wire and Yes Welder wire were rated really as high quality wires for flux core welding. So I thought for $23 for a 2-pound box, I'd give it a try. And I have to say, I find it to be a much better welder wire than the Hobart that I've been pleased with for a lot of years. It starts its arc much easier, it flows better, you can hear the sound of the wire is much better as it's welding, and there's a lot less splatter even with my AC machine than the Hobart wire had. There was very little cleanup with it once I laid the wire down. So I would say that if you are looking to try an alternative flux core wire, this Forney is something you should try, especially if you're using a less expensive welder, maybe like mine. Again, I've had this welder about 15 years. It's done just about everything I need it to do. I'd love to upgrade it, but you know what? Welders are expensive, and for the amount of welding that I actually do, it does okay. I'm not building structural stuff. I'm just gluing things together, for lack of a better term. So anyway, that's my thoughts on Forney welding wire. Let's get back to the project now and get this thing all put together. Okay, I've got the bracket painted and I mounted it onto the bike, and I even mounted the tube temporarily with a couple zip ties here just to see how it fits, and overall I have to say I'm quite pleased. There are a few things that I want to address before I permanently mount it. The first of which is this sort of tab here. I think this is a belt hook for when you're welding. You can have your electrodes right on your belt. They're easy to get to. I'm going to cut that off because it seems to interfere a little bit when I try to put the side cover back on the bike. The second issue is sort of similar. On the very bottom here, there is a little sort of leveling foot. I think this is when you're working with one of these on a workbench, it'll keep the tool tube from rolling away, or the welding tube actually. So I'm going to trim that off as well so the back of the tube fits in a little bit nicer into the pocket back here. And that brings up maybe my third and most important point here, is the tube sits a little bit further out from the center line of the bike than I kind of wanted it to. And if you look inside, you'll see there's still a fair bit of space in between the splash guard and the tube itself. Now, to correct this, the right thing to do is to actually get a little bit bigger piece of angle iron, something like maybe a 2-inch piece of angle iron, and weld the tabs in the same way. This would push the tool tube in a little bit further, probably about a 1/2 inch or maybe 5 to 8 millimeters further in, and tighten it up into the splash guard. For now, I can get the side cover on. It's just a little bit tight, it flexes a little bit, and it's a little hard to get the nut back in or the bolt back in the bottom to retain it, but it does work. I'm going to ride it like that for a while, but I think the next time I'm at Princess Auto or Home Depot where they have a small piece of 2-inch angle like that, I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to probably redo this so it pushes the tube in a little bit further. I don't have it today, or I would do it. Other than that, I think the next step is to take the tool off, cut off these brackets, and then permanently mount it with some band clamps that I have. I've got, I think, 2 4.5-inch band clamps that should go around there nicely and hold it in place. All right, let's get it off there. We'll cut those few tabs off, and then we'll get this thing permanently mounted and finish this project up. So I'll cut these temporary nylon straps off, and then I'm going to take this over to the bench, and using my oscillating tool, I'll cut off all of the extra plastic.
The blade that I have is a little bit too fine and it actually melts this plastic more than cuts it. But it does do a decent job and you can follow contours such as taking off this clip here. Overall, it did a decent job and I was satisfied. So I went over and loosened off the bracket that I made in order to slide on the first band clamp. This bracket fits pretty tight to the frame and I couldn't sort of slide it in. I had to take the bracket off a little bit. So I'll tighten these up, not overly tight, just snug them down with the impact wrench here. And this allows me to slide the tool tube into the 2 band clamps. I'll tighten these up gently, and once I'm satisfied that they're tight enough, I really think this thing is solid. It feels good, it doesn't move around, and I think it's going to work pretty well. Lastly, I'll put the side cover back on, and as I said, I had to kind of stretch it to get it to fit properly in here. It's a little bit tight around that tube. I think it'll be okay, but I think it looks good, it feels good. But really, what do you think?
Okay, everything's mounted up, and I decided to forego that divider that fits in there. And what I did is I actually put a retrieval rod in here. So when you pull it up, it brings out your toolkit. For the base of the retrieval rod, I couldn't really figure out what to do. I thought about maybe using an old sprocket. It would be kind of neat, it would fit down in there, but it was a little bit too big. What I ended up using was a canning lid from an old preserve bottle, and I just sandwiched it in between a couple fender washers. I can put this in with the actual toolkit, and it slides all the way to the bottom. I left it long so that it would be sort of held in place by the cap. Overall, I think this turned out really well. Again, it's not as heavy duty as, say, a Schedule 40 ABS plastic, but I think for the type of riding that I do, which is mostly gravel roads, I'm not really aggressive off-road, I think it'll be just fine for my needs. And if I was to pack it with a couple small rags once I get the tools in there to stop things from rattling around, I think that would further ensure that I don't get something coming running through this plastic. If it does fail, which is possible, I guess I'll just have to make a video on a more durable tool tube in the future, but for now, I think it's pretty good. Okay, I'm gonna go out and actually do a bit of riding. It's still smoking hot here, but I think if I get out on the road, maybe it'll cool me off a little bit. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, by all means, leave a comment. I really like reading them. And don't hesitate to leave a like or even subscribe if you haven't yet. It really does improve the channel, and I really love watching the subscribership grow. But until then, you have yourself a great day, and I hope to see you back here soon on Dino's Tinker Shed. Bye for now.